My son's coma revealed my family's greed, sinks, status, and insurance cash, so I exposed their cruelty, wrecked their names, and took measured revenge. I'm a 34-year-old single dad to the most amazing 8-year-old kid you'll ever meet, Jake. His mom left when he was 3. Classic story, right? So, it's been just me and my boy holding it down ever since. I'm a union electrician and own a small electrical contracting business with a crew of 5 guys. It's nothing fancy, but we get by pretty well. Better than my family thinks, which becomes important later. My family's always been completely messed up, and I mean that in the worst possible way. My mom, Patricia, is one of those women who thinks the world owes her everything just for existing. Picture a 58-year-old woman who still acts like she's the prom queen from 1983. She's obsessed with appearances, money, and what the neighbors think. She's the type who judges people by their car and thinks manual labor is beneath her precious family. My sister, Vanessa, is the golden child, married to some finance guy named Richard who wears $1,000 suits and drives a BMW. They live in a ridiculous McMansion in the rich part of town with 2 spoiled brats named Madison, 9, and Carson, 6. These kids have never heard the word no in their lives and throw tantrums when they don't get the latest iPhone or designer clothes. My dad, Robert, just nods along with whatever mom says to avoid her screaming fits. He's been doing this dance for over 30 years and figured out long ago that agreeing with Patricia is easier than dealing with her drama. The man hasn't had an original thought or opinion since the Clinton administration. I've always been the family disappointment because I work with my hands instead of wearing a suit to some fancy office. I call out their nonsense when they're being ridiculous, which apparently makes me the difficult one. They've made it crystal clear over the years that Jake and I are the charity cases of the family, the ones they tolerate at Christmas dinner but talk about behind our backs. Oh, and I have to mention my best friend and business partner, Danny. This guy's been my ride or die since we were sophomores in high school getting detention together. He's a short, stocky Italian dude who looks like he should be running a pizza joint in Brooklyn but can wire a building faster and better than anyone I know. Danny's got zero filter and says exactly what everyone's thinking but is too polite to say out loud. He's been telling me for years that my family's toxic as heck. "David, your mom's crazier than a bag of cats," he'd say while we're running electrical wire through some office building. "And your sister? She's got more red flags than a Chinese military parade. I'm telling you, these people are going to screw you over someday." Danny was right, but I always figured family was family, you know. Boy, was I wrong about that. Anyway, last April, about 16 months ago now, I'm on a job site finishing up some commercial electrical work for a new medical building when my phone rings. It's Jake's school, and I can tell immediately something's wrong because the principal's voice is shaking like a leaf. She tells me there's been an accident. Some poor guy had a sudden medical emergency while driving and lost consciousness, causing his car to run a red light and T-bone the school bus carrying Jake and 15 other kids. The bus flipped onto its side, and several children were seriously injured. Jake got the worst of it because he was sitting right where the car hit. I don't remember much about getting to the hospital. I know Danny drove my truck because I was completely losing my mind, hands shaking so bad I couldn't even dial my phone properly. What I do remember clear as day is the doctor finding me in the waiting room with that look on his face. You know, the one that means your entire world is about to get turned upside down and stomped on. Jake had severe head trauma, internal bleeding, broken ribs, a fractured arm, and a punctured lung. He was in emergency surgery, and they honestly didn't know if he'd make it through the night. The surgeon told me to prepare for the worst while hoping for the best, which is medical speak for your kid might die, and there's nothing we can do about it. The next 20 hours were just me sitting in that sterile waiting room, drinking terrible hospital coffee that tasted like burnt rubber and praying to every god I could think of, even though I'm not really a religious guy. I called everyone I could think of, my boss, Jake's teacher, even his Little League coach, everyone except my family, because I knew they'd find a way to make it about themselves. When they finally let me see him after the surgery, my tough little man looked so incredibly small, hooked up to all those machines. There were tubes everywhere, monitors beeping constantly, and a ventilator breathing for him. He was on life support in a medically induced coma, and the doctors couldn't tell me if he'd wake up or what condition he'd be in if he did. The neurologist was honest with me. Brain injuries in kids are unpredictable. Jake could wake up completely fine, have permanent disabilities, or never wake up at all. They just had to wait and see. The first night, I finally broke down and called my mom, crying like a baby. "Mom, I need you here. Jake's really bad. He might not make it." You know what she said? She sighed like I was interrupting her favorite soap opera or something. "Oh, David, you're always so dramatic about everything. Kids are tough. They'll bounce back." I can't just drop everything and drive 4 hours because you're panicking over nothing. Panicking over nothing. My son was in a coma, and she called it panicking over nothing. That should have been my first clue about what kind of people I was dealing with, but grief makes you stupid and desperate. Danny basically moved into the hospital with me that first week. He brought me real food because hospital cafeteria stuff is garbage, handled all the insurance paperwork because I couldn't focus on anything, and even convinced the nurses to let him set up a cot in Jake's room so I could sleep next to my boy. Your kid's going to pull through, Danny kept saying, even when the doctors weren't so sure. Jake's got your stubborn streak, and Thompson men don't quit. The kid's going to be fine. The nurses loved Danny because he'd crack jokes and keep everyone's spirits up, even when everything was falling apart around us. Hey nurse, you got any good cafeteria food recommendations? Because this guy, he pointed at me, has been living on vending machine garbage in desperation for 3 days straight. For 3 long days, I lived in that hospital room, holding Jake's small hand and reading him his favorite comic books out loud, hoping he could hear me somewhere in that medical coma. The doctor said hearing was often the last sense to go and the first to come back. So I talked to him constantly about everything: school, baseball, the new video game he'd been wanting. Then, Friday afternoon happened, and that's when I learned what my family really thought of us. Friday afternoon, I'm watching machines keep my son Jake alive when my phone buzzes. It's a text from Mom, David, my kitchen sink is leaking again. Come fix it this weekend. Bring your tools. I stared at the text for 10 minutes. My kid's in a coma, and she's worried about plumbing. I texted back, I can't. I'm at the hospital with Jake, who's fighting for his life. Her response, David, you always make everything about yourself with your drama. Just because you can't handle stress doesn't mean we stop living. The sink's backed up, and I have book club Tuesday. I laughed bitterly. My sister Vanessa jumped in. Mom's right. Kids get hurt all the time. Madison scraped her knee last week and didn't make this big deal. Stop being a drama queen. Some of us have actual responsibilities. I replied, Jake is on life support. He might die. How is this drama? My dad chimed in, David, your mom's plumbing is more important than your attention-seeking behavior. You've always been jealous that Vanessa married well. Stop using your son to get sympathy. My own father accused me of using my dying son for attention. Danny walked in, saw my face, and read the messages. Your kid's in a coma and they want you to fix a sink? David, your family's nuts, but this is next-level crazy. That's when the doctor entered, looking uncomfortable. David, I need to tell you about your mother. She called this morning claiming to be Jake's grandmother, asking about his condition and prognosis. He paused. She asked specific questions about Jake's insurance situation, life insurance policy, and beneficiaries if Jake didn't survive. The room spun. What? I asked. She asked about end-of-life options, he continued, taking a breath. She specifically asked about organ donation and financial compensation. Danny started pacing, muttering angrily in Italian. I felt sick. Doctor, what exactly did she say? I pressed. She asked detailed questions about brain death protocols, how long we keep patients on life support, and legal processes for end-of-life decisions. She wanted to know about organ donation compensation, life insurance implications, and funeral cost programs. She asked about killing my son for money. Did you discuss discontinuing Jake's care with your mother? The doctor asked. No, I said. He's my kid. I'd sell everything, live in my truck, work 3 jobs to keep him alive. Danny's voice rose. David, your mother called asking about murdering your kid for cash. This is evil. Then it clicked. Mom knew about Jake's small life insurance policy from when I started my business. She thought I was the broke single dad who might need help. But what she didn't know was that my electrical business had been crushing it. We had 3 major commercial contracts, $150,000 in savings, a house paid off, and connections throughout the city. She thought wrong. Doc, I need copies of every conversation she had with your staff, I said. Danny looked at me with that expression from high school, right before suggesting something that would get us in trouble. David, what are you thinking? He asked. I'm thinking it's time my family learned not to mess with me and my son. They just made the biggest mistake of their lives. That night, after Jake's vitals stabilized, I started planning. Not just any plan, but one that would show my family exactly what happens when you mess with a union electrician who knows how to hold grudges and has the connections to make lives very, very difficult. The next morning, Danny showed up with coffee and his evil grin. David, your family messed with the wrong guy. Think about it. You're a union electrician who knows every contractor, inspector, and building official in 3 counties. Your mom lives in that fancy neighborhood where reputation matters. Your sister's husband works at that investment firm where image is everything. Your dad's landscaping business depends on word of mouth. I started seeing where he was going, and I liked it. Plus, you've been doing electrical work for half the rich people in town. Time to call in favors and let people know what kind of family you're dealing with. First, I documented everything, every text, every call, and started recording conversations, which is completely legal in our state with one-party consent. The messages kept coming all weekend, each more insane than the last. Mom, I don't care about your tantrum. My sink's getting worse. I need it fixed before book club Tuesday. These women are important social connections. Vanessa, stop being dramatic about Jake's little accident. Madison's dance recital is next weekend, and she asked for you to bring those expensive chocolates. Little accident. My son was in a medically induced coma. Dad, your mom's birthday is next month. You're organizing the party like always. The country club's booked, so find somewhere else. Danny read over my shoulder, getting angrier by the minute. Your kid's fighting for his life, and they want birthday parties and plumbing fixes? Wednesday brought a call from Vanessa that pushed me over the edge. David, Richard's been telling everyone at work about your family drama. It's embarrassing. Can you tone down the attention-seeking? Also, Carson has soccer Saturday, and we need you to help set up the field. I hung up without a word. I was done being hurt and confused. I was angry, and when I get angry, I get focused. The doctor found me in the family lounge, looking murderous. David, how are you holding up? He asked. My family's acting like Jake's accident is an inconvenience to their social calendar. They want me to fix sinks while my son's on life support. He sat quietly for a minute. In 15 years of practice, I've seen families handle trauma in many ways. Some pull together, some fall apart. But this level of callousness toward a critically injured child is disturbing and unusual. They sent me a grocery list yesterday while Jake was having breathing problems. Have you considered protecting yourself and Jake from this toxicity? Sometimes the people supposed to love us unconditionally hurt us the most. That hit me. Protect Jake, not just medically, but from these parasites who saw my son as a dollar sign and an inconvenience. The next bombshell came from Jake's physical therapist. David, did you give anyone permission to call about Jake's treatment plan? My stomach dropped. What happened? I asked. Someone claiming to be Jake's grandmother called, asking detailed questions about recovery timeline, long-term care costs, and potential permanent disabilities requiring expensive treatment. She seemed more interested in worst-case scenarios than hoping for recovery. I was seeing red. Those weren't questions from someone hoping your son gets better. Those were questions from someone planning for him not to. The biggest revelation came Friday when Uncle Pete called from across the state. David, I just heard about Jake's accident. How's he doing? I would have called sooner, but Patricia told me you didn't want family interference. She said you preferred privacy and were handling everything yourself. My blood went cold. Uncle Pete, I never said that. I've been begging for help. There was a long pause. What exactly has Patricia been telling people? Turns out, Mom had systematically called everyone. Extended family, church people, neighbors, old high school friends. Telling them I was handling Jake's situation privately and didn't want visitors or help because I was very independent and preferred dealing with things alone. She'd actively prevented people from supporting us during the worst time of our lives. She told me Jake had a minor concussion, and you were being overly dramatic for attention, Pete said. Uncle Pete arrived Saturday with his truck full of home-cooked meals, clean clothes, and a gaming system for Jake's room. He took one look at Jake and started tearing up. Good grief. This kid's been through hell. How could Patricia call this minor? Sunday afternoon, Mom called while Pete sat in Jake's room. David, Pete called upset. What lies have you been telling him? I put her on speaker so Pete could hear. No lies, Mom, just the truth about Jake's condition and how you've been acting. She replied. How I've been acting? I've been supportive. I even called the hospital to check on Jake. I shot back. You called to ask about ending his life support and collecting insurance money. She denied it. That's not what I did. I was asking about available options because I was worried about medical bills. I was being helpful and practical. Pete's eyes went wide listening to this. Mom, you asked about organ donation money, brain death protocols, life insurance payouts. She doubled down. Someone has to think practically. You're too emotional to make rational decisions. Pete grabbed the phone. Patricia, this is Pete. I'm looking at my great-nephew who is very much alive and getting better. What you're describing isn't practical thinking. It's absolutely sick. He continued. Patricia, I've known you for 50 years, and I've never been more disgusted to call you my sister. She hung up. That night, Pete and I had a conversation that changed everything I thought I knew about my family. Pete dropped serious bombs that explained my family's twisted behavior. David, your mom's always been obsessed with money and appearances, but this isn't the first time she's shown this side. He looked uncomfortable, like he was revealing a decades-old family secret. When your grandpa was dying 10 years ago, Patricia was focused on inheritance and nursing home costs. She actually asked doctors multiple times about speeding up the process because medical bills were eating into what she considered her inheritance. I was stunned. Are you serious? Pete nodded. Your dad and I never told you because we thought grief made her act irrationally. But seeing how she's treating Jake, I think this is just who she really is. Pete stayed a full week, revealing more about my family's true nature than I'd learned in 34 years. Stories about mom manipulating situations for financial gain, resenting that I'd built an independent life, and spreading rumors about my parenting skills behind my back. She always wanted you to stay home, be available for Vanessa's kids, maybe move back in to care for your parents. Jake's accident wasn't a tragedy to her. It was an opportunity either to get rid of your burden or force you home broke and dependent. When Pete left, he hugged me tight. David, you and Jake are going to be fine. You're tougher than you know, and you're a damn good father. After Pete left, I felt pure, focused rage. Not messy, emotional rage, but cold, calculating rage that gets stuff done and makes people pay. That's when Danny and I put our real plan into action. Here's what my family didn't know. My electrical business wasn't just getting by. We'd landed 3 major commercial contracts, a shopping center, a medical building, and a government complex. I had over $150,000 in savings, owned my house outright, had excellent credit, and had professional connections throughout the city. Mom still thought I was the broke single dad who might need family help someday. She was about to learn how wrong she was. Step 1. I called my lawyer buddy who handles union negotiations. Hypothetically, if someone called a hospital asking about ending a child's life support for insurance, money, what legal trouble could they face? I told him the whole story. When I finished, he was quiet for a long time. David, what your mother did could be attempted fraud, child endangerment, conspiracy to commit fraud, or elder abuse. Document absolutely everything. Step 2. I reached out to Vanessa's mother-in-law, Carol, old money, sat on hospital boards, city council, and country club boards. She knew everyone who mattered and had never liked how my family treated me. David, honey, I had no idea they were being this cruel during such a horrible time. What can I do to help? Within days, Carol quietly spread word about what my family had done throughout all the right social circles. In a town where reputation matters more than anything, word travels fast, especially when it involves calling hospitals, asking about killing kids for money. The response was immediate and brutal. Richard was up for promotion to senior advisor at his investment firm. The senior partners, all friends with Carol, suddenly seemed less interested in promoting someone whose wife supported, ending a child's life support for financial gain. Mom's volunteer coordinator position at church was quietly terminated. The pastor suggested she take time to reflect on Christian values of compassion and family support. Dad's landscaping business started losing clients immediately. Word spread that he'd called his grandson's fight for life attention-seeking behavior in a community that values family above everything. That was business suicide. But I was just getting started. Jake woke up Tuesday morning, exactly 4 weeks after the accident, groggy and confused but alive and conscious. Dad, he said in a tiny, scratchy voice. Hey buddy, how you feeling? I asked. Like I got hit by a truck. Did I miss anything good on TV? That's my kid, tough as nails with humor, just like his old man. I documented Jake's recovery with photos, videos, and detailed notes, but shared absolutely nothing with my family. They only learned about his progress through others. Carol mentioned at the country club how amazingly well Jake was doing. The church prayer group celebrated his miraculous recovery. The local newspaper did a heartwarming story about his incredible resilience. My biological family was completely shut out. 1 month after Jake woke up, Vanessa showed up at the hospital unannounced. David, we need to talk about this situation. What situation? I asked. This ridiculous feud with the family. Mom's hurt. You won't let her see Jake. This has gone too far. I replied, Vanessa, your mother called asking about ending my son's life support for insurance money. She denied it. That's not what happened. She was asking reasonable questions because she was worried about your finances. She was being helpful. I countered. She asked about organ donation payments, brain death protocols, life insurance payouts. Vanessa's face went pale, but she doubled down. We all know you've been struggling financially since Jake's mom left. This accident is tragic, but you can't let it ruin your entire life. Sometimes awful things happen, for reasons we can't understand. I stared at my sister, wondering how we could share DNA. Get out of here right now, I said. David, please be reasonable. Get out of my son's room. Get out of this hospital. Get out of our lives completely. Don't ever contact us again. Vanessa left, muttering about how I'd regret this stubborn attitude when I really needed family money and support. She had no idea what was coming next. 2 months later, Jake was home and doing physical therapy like an absolute champion. The kid's recovery was nothing short of miraculous. Doctors had warned us he might have permanent cognitive or physical disabilities, but he bounced back faster and stronger than anyone expected. That's when the real consequences started hitting my family like a freight train. Carol called me regularly with updates, and she always sounded like she was enjoying herself. David, honey, you should know Vanessa and Richard are having some very serious marital problems. Turns out the stress of Richard's sudden career troubles, combined with the intense social judgment about their heartless behavior during Jake's crisis, was destroying their marriage. Richard's investment firm had quietly pushed him aside after losing several major clients who didn't want to be associated with someone whose family supported ending a child's life support for money. But here's the really interesting part. Carol continued with obvious satisfaction. Vanessa's been having an affair with her tennis instructor, some young guy named Brad. Richard found out, filed for divorce, and he's going for full custody of both kids. Your text messages about Jake's accident are being used as primary evidence of her character and fitness as a mother in family court. The custody hearing was brutal. Richard's lawyer read Vanessa's text messages aloud in open court in front of the judge, court reporters, and a packed gallery. Stop being so dramatic about Jake's little accident. Kids get hurt all the time. The judge's face when he heard that testimony was reportedly something to behold. Vanessa lost primary custody immediately and only got supervised visitation rights until she completed extensive parenting classes and psychological counseling. Meanwhile, Dad's landscaping business was hemorrhaging money and clients. His biggest client, a luxury housing development worth over $200,000 annually, dropped him immediately after the project manager, whose own kid had been in a serious accident a few years back, told him directly, "I can't in good conscience work with someone who abandons their own family during a medical emergency." Within 6 months, Dad had lost over 70% of his business and was struggling to pay basic bills. But the absolute best part of the whole situation, Mom tried to take out a second mortgage on their house to pay for Vanessa's expensive divorce lawyer. The bank denied her application specifically because of her reputation in the community. Turns out, trying to convince doctors to kill your grandson for insurance money doesn't make you a good credit risk in the eyes of local loan officers. 3 months after Jake's accident, I got a pathetic text from Mom, "David, I think there's been a terrible misunderstanding about everything. I never meant any harm to anyone. Jake is my grandson, and I love him very much. Can we please talk and work this out?" I stared at that message for about 30 seconds, then deleted it without responding. 6 months later, my parents were forced to sell their house because they couldn't afford the mortgage payments anymore. Dad's failed business, combined with massive legal fees from fighting my restraining order and Vanessa's brutal divorce costs, had left them completely broke. They moved into a crappy 2-bedroom apartment across town in a bad neighborhood. Meanwhile, Jake and I were thriving in our new life. The other families from the bus accident had become like an extended family to us. We understood each other's trauma in ways my biological family never could or would. Jake was back in school full-time, playing Little League baseball again, and just being a normal, happy kid. I started dating Sarah, a paramedic who had responded to Jake's accident call. She was tough, funny, incredibly smart, and Jake absolutely loved her from day one. "Dad, she's almost as cool as you," he told me one day, which in 8-year-old speak meant she was pretty awesome. Danny got promoted to foreman on our biggest commercial project, and business was booming so much that we hired 2 more electricians and bought additional work trucks. We landed a massive contract to wire the new hospital expansion. Yeah, the same hospital where Jake was treated. Life has a funny sense of irony sometimes. The final piece of my revenge plan was still coming together. Carol introduced me to her nephew, who worked in commercial real estate development. Turns out, there was a perfect property for sale, a small office building that would be ideal for expanding my electrical contracting business and establishing a permanent headquarters. The building was owned by my dad's former business partner, who was looking to sell quickly after Dad had screwed him over years ago in some shady deal I'd never known about until Pete told me the whole story. I bought the building with cash, didn't even need to apply for a loan. About a year after the accident, I started getting increasingly desperate phone calls from my family members. Mom, David, please, we really need your help. We're 3 months behind on rent, and your father's health isn't good. The stress has been terrible for both of us. Vanessa, David, I know we've had our problems, but I'm desperate here. I'm barely seeing Madison and Carson anymore, and Richard's being absolutely vindictive about everything. Can you please lend me money for a better lawyer? Dad, son, I know things got heated between us, but family should stick together when times get tough. I need work, and I know you've got connections throughout the city now. I ignored every single one of their calls and blocked their numbers. About 14 months after Jake's accident, I'm at the office going over electrical blueprints with Danny when my phone rings. It's Uncle Pete, and he sounds excited. David, you sitting down? Your mom's in some very serious legal trouble. Turns out, Mom had been getting increasingly desperate for money and decided to try filing a fraudulent insurance claim. She reported that all her expensive jewelry had been stolen during a break-in. The problem was, she'd actually pawned all of it months earlier to pay bills, and the insurance investigator found all the pawnshop receipts during their investigation. She's being charged with insurance fraud, filing false police reports, and perjury. She could face up to 5 years in prison. But that wasn't all the news Pete had. Your dad collapsed on a job site last week. Massive heart attack. He survived, but the doctors say he can't do physical work anymore. And Vanessa? Richard absolutely cleaned her out in the divorce settlement. She's living in a 1-bedroom apartment now and working at a call center for $12 an hour. I said, wow, that's something. Pete continued, David, they're all calling me constantly, asking if I think you'd be willing to help them financially. Your mom specifically asked if I thought you'd pay for a good criminal defense lawyer. I thought about that for exactly 2 seconds. What did you tell them? I asked. I told them they made their bed when they prioritized kitchen sinks over their grandson's life, and now they get to lie in it. 3 days later, Mom called me directly from jail. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. David, please don't hang up on me, she said. Her voice sounded completely different, smaller, older, desperate, and defeated. What do you want, Patricia? I used her first name on purpose to show I wasn't considering her my mother anymore. I need help with bail money. The insurance thing is just a misunderstanding. But I need a lawyer, and I don't have any money left. I cut her off. Let me stop you right there. You want me to pay for a lawyer to help you commit insurance fraud? She protested. It's not fraud. I was confused about the jewelry, and when I pawned it, I replied, like you were confused when you called the hospital asking about killing Jake for money? Complete silence on the other end. David, I know I made some mistakes, but I'm still your mother. Family is supposed to help family during difficult times. I said, you're absolutely right about that. Family does help family. Where was that energy when Jake was dying in the hospital? She claimed, that was different, and you know it. I shot back, no, it absolutely wasn't different. You showed me exactly who you really are. You prioritized your kitchen sink over my son's life. You asked doctors about ending his life support for insurance money. You called his fight for survival attention-seeking behavior. I could hear her crying on the other end. Good. You want to know what's really funny about this whole situation, Patricia? You thought I was broke this entire time. You thought I needed your help and support. You had absolutely no idea my business was pulling in over $300,000 a year. You could have been part of Jake's life, part of our success story. Instead, you chose to be a greedy, heartless person who saw dollar signs when she looked at her dying grandson. She begged, David, please, I'm begging you. I said, I'm completely done with you. Don't call me again. A week later, Vanessa called from yet another number. David, I know you're angry with all of us, but I'm absolutely desperate here. I can barely afford my apartment rent, and I'm only seeing Madison and Carson every other weekend with a court-appointed supervisor. Richard's being completely cruel about everything. I just need a loan, $15,000 for a better family lawyer. I'll pay you back as soon as I can get back on my feet. I cut her off. Stop talking right now, she pleaded. I just need help getting my kids back. I said, Vanessa, do you remember exactly what you said to me in the hospital while Jake was unconscious? She replied, I was upset and scared and not thinking clearly. I reminded her, you said Jake's accident happened for a reason. You called it a little accident while he was in a coma fighting for his life. You told me to stop being dramatic while my son was hooked up to life support machines. She claimed, I didn't mean any of that. I said, you showed me exactly who you are when things get difficult, and now you want me to pay $15,000 to help you? Here's my counteroffer, go pound sand. I hung up and blocked that number too. Dad was the last one to call about 6 months later. His voice was weak and shaky. "David, I know we've had our differences, but I'm really sick and I need help. The medical bills are piling up and we can't afford the medications." I replied, "Dad, you told me my son's fight for life was attention-seeking behavior. You said Mom's plumbing was more important than Jake dying. You want my help now?" He said I was wrong about everything. I was scared and said stupid things I didn't mean. I shot back, "You were scared? How do you think I felt watching my son hooked up to machines for weeks, not knowing if he'd ever wake up or what condition he'd be in?" He begged, "Son, please, I'm begging you." I said, "I'm not your son anymore. Real sons get supported when their kids are dying. Real sons don't get accused of attention-seeking during the worst moments of their lives." The best part about all these conversations? They all happened while Jake was in the background, completely healthy and happy, playing video games, doing homework, or practicing guitar. He had no idea his biological grandparents and aunt were desperately begging for money. He didn't need to know any of it. He had a real family now, me, Sarah, who I'd proposed to and was planning to marry, Danny and his wife Maria, who'd become like an aunt and uncle to him, and all our friends who'd actually supported us when it mattered most. Jake was thriving in school, playing travel soccer, and had completely recovered except for a small scar on his forehead that he thought made him look tough like Dad. So, here we are, about 2 years after the accident, and this is how everything finally ended. Jake's now 10 years old, completely recovered, and honestly the coolest kid I know. He plays travel soccer, gets straight A's, has tons of friends, and wants to be either an electrician like his dad or a doctor like the one who saved his life. Sarah and I got married last spring in a small ceremony. Jake walked her down the aisle and told everyone at the reception that he officially approved of Dad's choice in women. Danny's now my full business partner, and we've got 12 guys working for us across multiple crews. We landed the contract to wire the entire new hospital expansion. Yeah, the same hospital where Jake was treated. Sometimes life has a perfect sense of irony. 6 months ago, I got one final phone call. Mom had been sentenced to 4 years in prison for elder abuse and insurance fraud. She was calling from prison using someone else's phone time. "David, I'm truly sorry for everything. I know I was wrong about all of it. When I get out in a few years, can we please start over? I want to be a real grandmother to Jake." I thought about that for exactly 1 second. "Patricia, you had your chance to be a grandmother when it actually mattered. You chose to ask doctors about killing him instead. You chose your kitchen sink over his life. You chose money over family. Those were your choices, and now you get to live with the consequences." She pleaded, "Please, I've lost absolutely everything." I said, "Good. You should have thought about that before you tried to profit from my son's death." I hung up and went outside, where Jake was teaching Sarah's nephew how to throw a perfect spiral. "Dad, you okay?" Jake asked, because he's perceptive like that. "Yeah, buddy. Just taking out some trash." Tonight, as I'm writing this final update, Jake's asleep in his room. Sarah's reading a book next to me in bed, and Danny's texting me pictures of the new truck he bought with his profit-sharing bonus.